Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Vikas, the CEO and co-founder at Fable. Hello.
Hey, Christian. Good to meet you and talk to you today.
Nice to meet you. Please tell us what your company does.
Well, Fable is a platform to help GTM teams create winning demos. We believe that demos are an extremely important part of a SaaS GTM process. Whether you're a PLG-driven company or a sales-led motion, we believe that showing your product in its best light is extremely important, and that's where Fable comes into play, right? So for PLG teams, we help them increase their conversions and generate more qualified leads. And for sales-driven organizations, we help them close more deals faster. So yeah, that's Fable in a nutshell for you.
What are the problems that you saw in the industry with demos?
Currently, what happens with demos is it's extremely difficult for GTM teams to maintain these demo environments, right? So a SaaS company typically keeps launching new features, new modules, new products every single month or every single quarter, which is exactly the reason why we as a SaaS customer at the end of the day keep buying, and keep paying regularly month on month or quarter on quarter. So for GTM teams to be able to managing these demo environments is extremely difficult. They'll have to go to the engineering team and ask them to update the dummy data, update the new features, update the new modules. That's one part of the problem, right? The other part of the problem is for salespeople who are on the calls giving real demos on a day-to-day basis, they're not able to customize these demos for every buyer. You typically see these ACMO demo environments where every single call has the same demo with the dummy data, which is used by 10 or 20 sales team members at the same time. And you are left embarrassed when something doesn't really work when you're sharing your screen, right? So at the end of the day, if somebody uses Fable, they'll be able to control the demos by themselves without really having to talk to anybody on the engineering team. So yeah, that's the massive problem that we feel that there is, and we're taking a few baby steps to solve that.
Fantastic. What are your best features at Fable?
The best features for us is, like I mentioned before, this is something that any sales or marketing team member can get started within 5 minutes without even talking to an engineering team member of their own, without writing any code, without involving any design member at the end of the day. So be it for a landing page, if you want to showcase an interactive product tour of how your product works for a specific pain point, be it for a live demo where you want to customize every single thing for a large mid-market or an enterprise prospect that you have, all of these can be done in a matter of 5 minutes without really pushing any code, right? So I think that's the best part where we're seeing a lot of interest from our early users that have started using Fable.
Okay. What is the pricing for Fable?
The pricing depends on what modules we're talking about, right? So if you're talking about the interactive product tours for marketing-led teams, it depends on what you're using, and it starts from $500 a month, goes upwards to $2,000 a month. But if you're talking about replacing your entire demo environments, giving the no-code tools to your sales teams to customize demos day in and day out, build a lot of POCs, sandbox environment, etc., the prices there start from $3,000 a month. So yeah, that's the range of options that we have.
What's your favorite example of a happy customer and how you help them?
Well, one of the early customers that we have had is a very large, US SaaS-based startup that has just raised Series B. And we've been speaking with them for over 6 weeks now. And it actually happened by accident to start with. I think we just reached out to one of their marketing leaders to ask them feedback about Fable and if there's anything that we are missing from a pain point of view. And what started there went on actually to a bunch of conversations where we've not just involved that one marketing leader that we were supposed to talking to. We're now talking to the VP of product marketing. We're talking to the VP of sales. We're now talking to the CRO. And we're talking about Fable being implemented across the revenue organization. So that in itself for us is a huge boost. And the fact that, somebody across the shores is trusting a small startup that's still budding and taking baby steps to solve for their revenue, problems across the board is a testimony to the fact that we're solving a real deal at the end of the day, right? I think the idea and the intent is to make sure that we find tens and hundreds of these companies going forward where we can solve real GTM problems at the end of the day.
Are your target clients mostly enterprises?
Yes, mid-market companies and enterprise companies. That's correct. Typically B2B SaaS, companies in these two segments.
How hard it has been for you to get these clients being a startup?
I think it's extremely hard. More so getting your first 10, 20 customers because you're an early stage startup, and there are a lot more questions that people ask in terms of your existence, your background, what is the other logos that are there. Obviously, because the other side of things, they also need that sense of comfort or sense of some sort of a cushion to tell them that this is not a fly by night sort of a startup that started today and is starting down tomorrow, right? So it has been extremely hard, but I think that's what you've signed up for as a founder. So the day you have signed up for building a company on your own for the next few years, it is a very tough journey. So yeah, I think just embrace it, and if you get some lessons on the way, that you're lucky. That's what I'd say.
You put it great. How competitive is the space that you're operating in?
Well, the first part of it, where we're talking about interactive product tours, is pretty competitive right now. The second part of it, where we're talking about creating sandboxes and entire demo environments for enterprise SaaS companies, I think that is a market that's still pretty early stage. But what has happened from the time COVID has actually started, early 2020, is that a lot of us have realized that demos are extremely important part of a SaaS buying and a selling process, right? So previously in an enterprise motion, you would have salespeople flying down, doing wine and dine, going to conferences, etc. All of them are now being taken over by Zoom, etc. Right. And, even though we had a lot of inbound funnels previously, in the last 1 to 2 years, we're talking heavily about PLG motions and PLG driven organizations, right? So which means that, landing pages, ABM campaigns, website experiences also become extremely important, right? So I think the good part is, even though one half of the problem statement that we're solving for is heavily competitive, it means that education is not something that we'll have to be worried about. Thankfully, there are a few competitors who've come in early, spent a lot of $1 million from their funding to educate the people that this is a problem that you have to solve for. So today, somebody like a Fable can come and say, we understand the problem better. We know what we're doing. But the whole idea is to make sure that you get started in as quick fashion as possible and you see your results as quickly as possible.
When did you start the company?
Started about 8 months ago. Spent the first couple of months talking to SaaS GTM leaders across the globe. So that was one thing that we really wanted to make sure that, we don't take any shortcuts. This is something that we speak about within our, co-founding members, me and a couple of other co-founders of mine, that, we'll beg, borrow, steal, but then we'll make sure that we talk to as many people as possible to understand the pain points and exactly what a GTM leader is thinking at the end of the day, right? Because if you're not solving for a pain point, sure, a few people will buy today, a few people will, buy our product tomorrow. But then when the economy hits hard, it's pretty similar to how it is today, people will come back and say, Fable is, a vitamin, not a painkiller. I don't really want it, right? So
exactly.
the first couple of months was primarily talking to GTM leaders in India, in the US. We spoke to a lot of companies in Europe, in Southeast Asia and South America as well. So it was a massive exercise where we spoke to about 75, 80, different B2B SaaS companies across revenue ranges. And hopefully those learnings will, pave our way to create a kick-ass product going forward.
Why did you choose to solve this particular problem?
So me and the other co-founder of mine said, our previous avatars would have been the ICP for Fable, to be honest. We were GTM folks ourselves where, we both were leading our revenue functions. He was leading marketing, I was leading sales, and we've been doing that for the last 8 to 10 years now. And we've seen that demos are extremely critical part of a selling process, right? And in the last couple of places where we worked together, we always used to pull our sales engineers on the call in the last minute, or we had actually asked a support team to create something customized, like a mini POC before every call, right? And then we were talking about creating different marketing videos or GIFs that we can put up on our website landing pages. So if you see, all of these are sort of mini versions of demos or interactive demos that you would want to create to increase your conversions in one way or the other. And when we started talking to a lot of other GTM leaders, early last year, when we started doing our research, we felt that, we are not the only ones who face this problem. Seems like there are a lot of other people in different countries talking about the same problem, but in a different way, depending on what stage of their, growth cycle are they in. So we thought, nothing better than a founder understanding the problem themselves, rather than you creating a pool of 20 different ideas, figure out this is something that's cool, you might be a little early entrant there and you might grab some funding. We thought we'll stick to an idea where we deeply resonate with the pain point and we understand it as GTM folks ourselves. And so, yeah, that's how Fable started last year.
Fantastic story. And have you raised any funding?
We raised a very small friends and family around, I'd say, late last year. Primarily the folks who have known us, working in the B2B SaaS space in India. Some very few strategic angels, ex-CEOs of companies that we work with. It's a very, very small round. The whole thought process of actually getting them on board is to not just take their money, but also seek their strategic assistance to make sure we hit the ground running. And there've been people who have not just helped us from the day we've started building Fable, but they've also been mentors in our personal careers as well, as in when we started working in B2B SaaS, right? So that's a journey that, we deeply respect, and we're super glad that they're here in this with us.
Awesome. How big is your team right now?
We're a team of 10 members. Three of us are, co-founders, and the rest of the, team members are in engineering and design. So I think it's a no-brainer today to make sure that you come out with a B2B SaaS product that's pixel perfect and, the product is sharp enough, which is not having any bugs or issues right now. So the intent is to become a global product. So we are investing heavily on our engineering and design at this point in time. So yeah, that's where most of our, I would say money and efforts are going right now. And everything on the GTM side is something either the founders are doing ourselves, and we also have a couple of close, agencies that we've worked with in the past that have helped us scale our operations as well. So yeah, that's our team composition right now.
Do you think that that's a good strategy to hire agencies at the startup level?
Well, I think it's a yes and a no, right? It depends on what stage you are in and, what is your priority that you have right now. So given where we are right now, I think any other early stage founder like mine would say that the one thing that we don't really have is time on our hands. But at the same time, if you say that, we don't have time, which is why we're not able to, execute 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we have in the bucket list, the industry is not going to wait for you. Your customers are not going to wait for you. The market is not going to wait for you, right? So we'll have to figure out what's something that you can do it in your own control, but at the same time, where should you raise your hand and call out for expert help? I think that is where we are right now, right? So we are investing heavily in our brand marketing, which is where we're working with a couple of folks that we've known before and have worked with a lot of other B2B SaaS companies from this part of the world. But I think as we grow, we want to make sure that we standardize as many processes as we can. But then will we continue working with an external agency, or will we continue to, talk about having somebody in-house? I think that's a question to be dealt with at a later date.
Okay. What has been your best growth tactic for getting new clients for Fable?
I think outbound, reaching out via LinkedIn and email has worked pretty well for us. And I think the reason that has also worked out for us is because we're still not a very strong brand where people can associate Fable with, solving demos for GTM teams yet. We're still an early stage company trying to move up the ranks. So at this point in time, we're obviously trying to be part of a lot of these Slack communities, closed group networks, trying to make sure that we're interacting with as many GTM teams as possible to learn their pain points on a daily basis. But at the same time, doing some sort of outbound from a founder level, where we talk to people, connect with them, understand exactly what's happening, and then figure out if our problem can solve for their pain point, right? So I think that's something that we're doing right now, but slowly and steadily we want to double down on the same set of activities that are working for us. And like I mentioned, the whole idea of brand marketing exercise that we're, doing now, for example, starting a podcast in the near future, talking about a few growth stories of a few other SaaS companies, that have been there, done that in the GTM space, and a lot of other things that we might come up in the near future. It's primarily to associate, the brand recall value. But otherwise, I think from a revenue generating point of view, outbound is something that we'd love to stick to.
Makes total sense. Oh, thanks for sharing. What has been your biggest challenge in the last 8 months since starting the company?
I think the biggest challenge has been trying to figure out, how do we scale our operations from GTM side of things? Like I said, considering that we are an early stage startup, there are only so many things that we could do. We also have to focus on delivering a world-class product, making sure that the design is pixel perfect, ensuring the messaging is something that you keep fine-tuning, because after every 20 or 30 customers that you talk to, there'll be more nuggets that you'll understand. You'll talk about a lot more things happening in the market and in the industry. Your competitors might be talking about some other language that you will have to make sure you're accustomed to, etc. Right? So I think trying to make sure that we are at the fast-paced level as the industry and the market is something that's a challenge right now. But I think that's something that every early stage startup will have to fight it out with, right? So yeah, so far so good. Hopefully things only get better from here on for all of us.
Let's hope that that happens. Yeah. Okay. What is your vision for Fable for the upcoming years?
I mean, the vision for us at Fable is to make sure that, for every organization where demo is a critical part of their selling process, we would want to make sure that we are a very important part of that particular process and help these companies close more deals. I think that's something, we'd love to if we are able to achieve in the next few years, right? So we're not really worried about, what size of companies these are, as long as they're in mid-market and the enterprise segments, right? But we know for a fact that a lot of these companies require product demos. A lot of these companies require POCs to be built. A lot of these companies have a very strong GTM motions where they're talking about increasing the conversions at the end of the day. So if you are able to help them improve their numbers, and make sure that we are a very important, SaaS tool on their list that actually gives them some sort of an ROI, we'd be very, very happy. Because, looking at the market as it is right now, we don't really want to be just another tool, 101st SaaS tool that any B2B SaaS company is using, because it's pretty easy to be forgotten, pretty easy to not get adopted, and pretty easy to just get lost at the end of the day. And, one day somebody is going to look at all the tools that you're using and then going to say, you know what, dude, we don't really have the money. Let's remove 50 out of these 100 tools that we have, right? So that's not the intent. Even though we might just sell to fewer companies, we want to make sure that we're extremely important part of their, selling process, as far as closing more deals and increasing conversions are concerned.
I really love your mindset. So I'd like to hear how you started your career. What is your story?
Well, I accidentally started in SaaS 11 years ago. So, I started as one of the founding members of a B2B SaaS startup in India back in 2011. This was a startup that was trying to build something pretty similar to what Shopify did for the globe, but primarily catered towards Indian merchants. So the primary reason why I started working with that team and the organization was because I love talking to people. I love understanding different pain points and, getting in personal connections with them, trying to see if there's a way I can help them solve that particular problem. And I did not know that the role that I was getting into was called sales at that point in time. And I did not know what B2B SaaS was. So it was an accidental journey that started with me 11 years ago. But I think over the course of the years, I've learned exactly what it means to run a tight-knit ship with B2B SaaS, learn how to scale teams, how to sell to global organizations, how to move up market, how to hire, how to train people. So I think all of those learnings over the last few years have helped me take that real plunge and say, you know what, I think I'm now ready to again go back and start up, this time, at the global level. So yeah, thanks to all my learnings that I've had in the past. And I keep joking internally with my other team members. If not for B2B SaaS, I think I'll be unemployed. I'm really bad at a lot of other stuff. So I'm trying my level best to make sure that Fable works.
Yeah. What did you say is the biggest learning that you got in all these years that you would share with a starting founder?
I think the biggest learning for me is to make sure that, you call out for help whenever needed. I mean, especially if you're a founder, it's a very lonely journey. Sure, you might have investors, you might have your, co-founders, but at the end of the day, there will be situations where you'll think that, I've given my 100%. I'm not really knowing why the needle is not moving. Maybe the first customer is not signing your contract yet. Maybe you're not able to hire your first employee. Maybe you're not able to get your first blog post out, right? There'll be a lot of small and big issues that will keep coming out. But then one thing that I've learned over the years is when you raise your hand and ask for help, there are people who've been there, done that, who are more than willing to come forward and share their piece of their story or piece of learning. And you never know from whom you can actually, get some sort of an advice that might work for you, right? So yeah, I mean, if there are any other early stage startup founders out there, I would say that yes, let's accept that it's a lonely journey out there, but there are a lot of other people who've been there, done that, and are more than happy to pass on their advice to you.
Thank you for sharing. What's your favorite SaaS product apart from Fable?
Well, there are quite a few SaaS products that we love. But I think if you ask me, top 2 or top 3 SaaS products that I love, I think in the new age SaaS products, I love Scratchpad. I have been a sales, guy, over the last few years myself. I've run a lot of revenue teams, working with a lot of SDRs and A's myself. And I know that working with enterprise CRMs has been a pain in the ass. And what Scratchpad is trying to solve, for sales teams on a daily basis is extremely important, and it makes the life much, much easier for folks to focus more on converting more deals and hitting their quota. I think that's one tool that I'm extremely fascinated about, and I've been watching them extremely closely. The second SaaS product, I think, that I love primarily not just for their product, but also the way that they're doing their marketing is HubSpot. Always on the dot with how they do their content, how they look at their brand, how they look at their design, how they position themselves, even though they came much, much after Salesforce already, announced themselves as the leader in the space. And the third, I think I'd say, is Gong, who grew extremely quickly, not just because of the way the product was built and the ease of use of the product, but also how they took their entire GTM motion, right? So I think this is something that a lot of people who worked at Gong talk about, right? You either have a good product or you have a good GTM motion for a B2B SaaS company to be successful. But if you have a good product as well as a good GTM motion, there's absolutely nobody who can stop you, right? I think that's where, Gong has hit the nail in the head. And, I think it's there for all of us to see why they're scaling, right? So, yeah, I mean, as a SaaS founder, I would love to pick some of the learnings that we have seen very closely from these few SaaS companies. And even if you're able to apply 2 or 3 of those learnings, I think we'd be pretty successful.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to mention on today's podcast?
No, I think, pretty much, I think we pretty much covered most of what I wanted to share. So yeah, I mean, 2 points that I would love to share. One is, if you are an early stage founder, please make sure that you're continuing to work whatever you're working on every single day. The future days are going to be better, and there'll be a lot more people who would be using your product if you're actually solving for a real problem. And if you're actually in GTM, and if demos are an extremely critical part of your sales process, you're missing out if you're not using Fable.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for all the things you shared. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen. It was fun chatting with you today.